I'm going to talk about heroes in Vietnam and heroines. You'll find Vietnam is a country very much committed to history. So the first group we're going to hear about for a minute are the Trưng sisters. Has anybody heard of the Trưng sisters?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to pass this one around. By the way, if you can see, what are they riding? Can you see? Elephants. Why are they riding elephants? Well, they didn't have tanks in those days. And these Trưng sisters were leading a revolution. And so they rode the tanks into battle. I mean, the elephant tanks. So let me pass that around. The Trưng sisters were at the same time as Augustus Caesar and Tiberius. The year is 40 to 43, the Western years. The next hero we're going to hear about is Lady True. They say Bok True. That's the word for Aunt Bok True. We'll talk a little bit about her. And by the way, pass these around so everybody gets some. Okay. The third one we're going to hear about is Trưng Hung Dao, one of the greatest military leaders of all times, and also a real patriot. So Trưng Hung Dao, this is a statue of him right there in Saigon at the Saigon River, and behind it you can see some of the modern buildings today. And then the final fourth hero I want to bring up is Win Chai. Win Chai lived about the year 1500, somewhere around 14 to 1500, and he was an advisor to Leloy, the emperor. Okay, let's start off with the Trưng sisters. First thing you need to know about the Trưng sisters is they grew up in a military family. Their father was a soldier. He taught them the military arts. Second thing you need to know, the Trưng sisters married, and they had each a husband. And one of the husbands, the older one, he worked for the Chinese government as an official. But he was Vietnamese. And he thought that the Chinese government was taxing the people too much. Now, where have we heard that before? He protested, saying he wanted the taxes lowered on the people, and he was rewarded. He was executed. They then expected, the Chinese expected, that his wife, the Trưng sister, that she would just disappear. She'd go off somewhere, live with an aunt, and die as an old lady. No! She and her sister got together and they raised an army. And one of the greatest speeches is the one that she made to her troops at the Neva River. She says, "We are fighting for our fatherland. We are fighting for our justice." She wanted justice for what had happened to her husband. "And we are fighting for our families." So they fought for 3 years. Unfortunately, there were a lot of Chinese, and the Chinese came back, and eventually they were able to defeat her and her sister. Now there's a big story. What happened to the Trưng sisters? They're of course heroines today. What happened to them is like one of three fates. One fate is that the Chinese general took the two sisters, captured them, chopped off their heads, and sent the heads back to the emperor. The other story is, no, the Trưng sisters were not going to surrender. And in those days, meaning not to surrender, they jumped into the river, and the idea is that they drowned. Now there's a third idea that the Trưng sisters actually, after jumping in the water, were able to be rescued, and that they have gone into a heavenly cavern, and from there, whenever Vietnam needs the Trưng sisters, they're ready to come back. Now you know which story I like.
I like that.
Now one of the phrases that happened at the time of the Trưng sisters, and I will use my best Vietnamese here, this is a phrase that goes, "Ya den ya, dan bao tung dan."
When the war comes, the woman have to act.
That's the other one.
And it's
So what he's saying is, when the war comes, the women have to act.
And it's translated in one way: when the enemy is at the gate, the women go out fighting. And you have to understand that the role of women in Vietnam is quite different than in China. In fact, when the emperor heard that there was this revolution going on in Vietnam, they didn't dare tell him that it was a woman leading it. Because how could a woman fight against the Chinese soldiers? Considered an insult by the Chinese soldiers. Okay, Trưng sisters, always recognized now as the heroines, and they're the ones that Vietnam looks to for independence.